Well, thanks for your participation in that. I hope that was interesting. Now we're going to launch into more of the somewhat technical portion of the morning, now that we had a chance to sort of interact and play that fun game. But before we do, I just wanted to give the results real quickly. So a couple people asked, first off, who do we play the game with? Well, we've done it with scientists, practitioners, stakeholders, but we've also done it with students. It's been a pretty powerful tool in universities to explain our approach, as well as for teachers who want to teach new classes in biodiversity, ecosystem, environmental management, things like that. This is the first time we play the game. If you look at the map on the bottom, you can see it's pretty different than what the iteration we just presented. This was a bunch of young scientists in the Caribbean working on similar issues to what we're doing in Belize. But you all served as sort of a test case for this game, which we're going to play next month with the WWF National Council, and hopefully get more funding to do work like this and elsewhere in the Caribbean. So without further ado, the results for the two rounds. So, what does this mean? Well, in round one, we can see the first row is the points gained from fishing and recreation tourism. The second one is points lost from habitat, although you shouldn't be too concerned with that because that was sort of a blind guess.
Can you just clarify who was team 1 and who was team 2?
Team 1 is the ones, people who could see this side of the board facing here, and team 2 was on the far side. So, I'll cover this. So in round one, the second row is points you lost for destroying habitats. You can see that this was certainly not in your control since we unveiled that portion of the game. Team 2 did a better job in sort of maximizing the points from those two services, and their net score was slightly higher. If we look at round 2, you might be disappointed to see that both teams lost. Didn't get as many points for fishing and tourism as they did in round 1, and but they also reduced the points they lost for habitats because of the protection provided by MPAs. In the future rounds, when we add the coastal vulnerability component, which will also add to that second row, the minus signs, we'll see a much greater loss in that, and so it'll make a little more sense in terms of the net scores and might contribute to differences in what you're seeing now. The last round, you can see how close it was in round 2. Team 1, 1,741. Team 2 just edged them out with 1,772. So in both terms of scores, Team 2 is the winner today. But you can see how for both teams in round 2, the net score was actually lower in the second round. And this just speaks to the nature of how this is an iterative process, how we use the models. The game you're playing here and the way we scored is a proxy for the models that we map and measure and value these services. You run it through not just once, not just twice, but many times, going back to stakeholders, back to the models and different scenarios, refining your approach and consistently running it until you find those win-wins and the best way you can sort of maximize your development and your protection for the environment. So question real quick?
Just to add that actually in Team 2, one stakeholder was relocated without his consent, so it was actually
you cheated?
Stakeholder process.
Thanks for confessing. So, any other questions? Thanks again for your help. This feedback you gave, the questions you have will be very useful as we further develop this game, and definitely keep an eye out for it on our website as we further develop it. So now we're going to turn over to another sort of interactive portion. But first, has anybody, just show of hands, has anybody ahead of time downloaded the tool Invest 2.3 based on Holly's email that was sent before the conference and have it loaded on their laptops? Okay, then you're all set. If you haven't, that's quite all right. We have about 5 DVDs with the full install there. You literally just need to drag it onto your computer. This will be for people who actually want to run the models today. And you don't need any licenses, you don't need ArcGIS to run them. You can just run them with a regular executable, which we'll provide and install. So if you could just raise your hand if you want to run models later this morning and you need the installer. There's one folder in there called Invest 2.3.0. Just drag that folder into your C drive, and it'll copy over in a few minutes, and then you'll have everything you need to go. Thanks, Holly. So the next portion is also going to be sort of a group exercise, except it's going to be just groups of 2 now. We've developed 2 case studies, one for Sumatra in Indonesia, looking at terrestrial and freshwater model results, and another one is a marine example on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And so what we're going to do is, CK is going to give an introduction to our case study in Vancouver Island, and then I'm going to give an introduction to the Sumatra case study. Then we have packets which have the same introduction written out, a quick background, pictures, and actual invest model results. So you don't need to run any models in this portion. What you're going to do is look at results, understand the case study by reading the background, listening to this quick presentation we're going to give, and then you're going to answer some questions in groups of 2. So just pair up, have an eye on who you're going to pair up with after we give the introduction. And then the best part about it is 2 of the models that are shown in the results for these case studies, we're going to be, at the very end of this morning's session, going to be doing a demo of our carbon and our water quality model. So you can see actually the nuts and bolts and how it works. So CK is going to talk to you now about water quality in Vancouver Island.
I really want to use this remote control. Oh, by the way, how many people are working for marine systems or are interested in marine systems? I heard of you, yeah. 2, 3. Okay, good numbers. And I will try to attract more people for my session. Okay. So yeah, I will in my section we will focus on the coastal and marine spatial planning, specifically focus on the west coast Vancouver Island case study. Okay, these are some intros of marine spatial planning, but we do not need to go over this one. So we work with partners in the west coast of Vancouver Island. The name is West Coast Aquatic Management Board. This is a kind of umbrella group that includes federal, provincial, and local governments, and also the natives, the First Nation. So they try to create a marine spatial plan that balances interests of multiple stakeholders. And with stakeholder community meeting, they come up with these goals. So they want shoreline protection services provided by natural habitats, particularly for marine system, and also they are interested in healthy and clean ecosystems that provide, the opportunities for tourism and recreational activities, which is very important, contributes a lot for their revenues over there. And also they are interested in, fishery, fish production from aquaculture farm, and also sustainable fisheries. And they live in the island, and they heavily depend on energy supply from the mainland. So they are really interested in independent energy resource. So they are also interested in offshore wave energy. Okay, so West Coast Aquatics and the Natural Capital Project team together, we applied various invest models to analyze the kind of trade-offs to make best marine spatial planning for their area. So the models include models for wave energy, coastal vulnerability, fish aquaculture, aesthetic quality, and recreation and fisheries, and habitat risk assessment, and water quality. This shows the range of area the models are applied. Okay, so these are the general policy steps that include scoping and assess existing and future conditions and develop spatial management plan. And these are the list that Invest contributed and can contribute. First, Invest was used to identify various visions and values by exploring existing human uses, and the model also used to identify hotspots of human uses and risk and benefits. Based on these existing conditions, they come up they develop some scenarios, and then they use this Invest to assess the changes in ecosystem services under different future scenarios. And then if they satisfied with the results, they go with it, but mostly this, as Greg described before, is iterative process. So we are in the middle of this. And finally, we try to help identify their management strategies for marine spatial planning. Okay, so this is some of the examples that West Coast Aquatic prepared. So this area, the boxes indicate marine planning units, and based on the model results, they recommended some of their management plans. For example, this area is more people live there. It's a kind of population center, and also important habitats exist there, and they are very sensitive to the stressors. So what they recommend is a kind of conservation scenarios. So not much development option, plans here. On the other hand, here is a little bit open area, and habitats are less sensitive to the stressors. So they are allowing a little bit of the development activities. That includes public docks and more floatomes and shellfish farming, aquaculture farm, etc. So this is prepared by West Coast Aquatic, again based on the Invest model results. So what I'm going to introduce what we will do for my session. So again, we focus on the west coast of Vancouver Island, specifically here, small inlet. The name is Lemons Inlet. And I know it's a little bit too much information maybe. So we have 3 scenarios: baseline, conservation, and industry expansion. And so they want to arrange this recreational floatomes and kayaking and shellfish harvest depend on the different scenarios. So do not worry about this. You do not need to remember anything here. The package that I will provide you will have all the details. So you just need to go through and step by step, and you will come up with the results. So what we are going to do, I will show you the model results, and then you will analyze. You will investigate the ecosystem services trade-offs. So you will decide which scenario is best fit to your to make it for your goal. So that's mostly it. Thank you. Any questions, or do you have time? No.
So that was CK's pitch, which I thought was pretty good, but I'm going to give you my pitch for the terrestrial application that we're going to focus on our second case study in Sumatra, Indonesia. And you'll notice my name is not on here because this represents work by a colleague of mine at WWF near Malafag. And so, real quick to introduce the case study. Following a request by government decision makers, the Sumatra Spatial Planning Forum, which is a collaboration among Indonesian academics and non-governmental organizations, applied Invest to inform sustainable land use planning at the provincial and district level. So what you're looking at here is Central Sumatra. Government land use plans are released every 5 years to prescribe the amount of timber harvest, plantation expansion, and conservation. The objective of this forum were to identify ecosystem-based land use plans that would support biodiversity conservation and ecosystem service production, while fostering economic development at the same time. One of the largest threats to Sumatra's ecosystems is deforestation, which degrades local water quality and reduces locals' access to valuable forest products. So information on ecosystem services from INVEST could help answer 3 important management questions. Where should forest restoration take place? Where concessions for oil palm and forestry could be awarded? And where new programs such as payment schemes for carbon and watershed service could be established. And so again, you'll have this information in your packets, but we're working with 3 scenarios, a baseline scenario, and they use several service models to look at this. Terrestrial carbon stock, water yield, sediment retention, water pollution regulation, and wildlife habitat quality. The team compared 2 alternative land scenarios. So what you're seeing right now is the current situation in 2008, and then 2 futures. The ecosystem's vision scenario of sustainable land use, which is on the bottom. You can see in green that is forest compared to the brown, which is plantations. And then the existing plan, which is the government spatial plan, to incorporate basically a business as usual scenario. And this is up here at the top. You can see a lot less forest and more plantations. So what we do well at INVEST is map and measure these services. So what you're seeing here again is the baseline carbon stocks in 2008, and then what the change would be for these 2 different future scenarios. So you can see the areas in red are where there's a loss in carbon, and then the areas in blue is where there's a gain. We also like to do trade-off analyses. You might be familiar with the spider diagram. Some people find this confusing, but the benefit of this, while it's not spatial, is it helps you look at trade-offs. All the different sort of axes on this web are the different services we're looking at, and we can compare it across multiple scenarios. So that's all I want to show with that introduction. And so now would be a good time to decide whose pitch you like more, or maybe coming into which side you're more interested in. The terrestrial freshwater side with Sumatra, or the marine side with water quality, or in West Coast Vancouver Island. And so I'm going to ask you to choose which of those 2 case studies you want to focus on, and then pair up in groups of 2 with one of these packets we're going to distribute. And again, read through the case study. It's very short, each of them is 2 pages, and answer some of the questions we have. And I'll be walking around on the terrestrial side to help you along if you have any questions, and CK will do the same with his packet. So maybe we can get a show of hands first for the marine people who would like the marine packet, and then you can pair up. So you guys Yeah, let's do that. So marine, why don't we do marine over here on this side? Looks like we have 4 people. So we can each work individually or as a team.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're a marine person, that's like go behind the screen. And if you want to focus on terrestrial, stay in front of the screen.
So terrestrial people, just when you have a pair, just raise your hand.